Daniel Penny, and Synchromorpheus pointed this out as well. He looks in the profile like Lincoln, a beardless Lincoln, does on the penny. And the Lincoln reference may have some significance here. Let me go through your comments, and then I want to go on to the next topic. Javo82 says, don't forget about the comedy show Key and Peele. Yes, there were some Jordan Peele, Michael Jackson connections there, where he tells a Michael Jackson impersonator that Michael Jackson is dead, and the Michael Jackson impersonator cries and moonwalks away. Well, I'm sure it's funny in some weird absurdist way, but wait a minute here. We're talking about a Michael Jackson impersonator and Jordan Peele. There's something there. Definitely weird. Exalt says, a bunch of us are going to use Discord chat if Tim doesn't do spaces. Oh yes, I want to, as a matter of just habit now, we will be going to discuss live streams after in one of our servers, Twitter Spaces or Discord. And a lot of these conversations are going to end up in the podcast feeds. I just have to go through and edit these things. So if you have questions, comments, things to add, it's all good. Okay, continuing along these lines, Audrey Hale in Hell, the Club Q shooting, a build up to this new specter of the leftist shooter, and it's not over yet. We haven't had the Trans Day of Rage, and I'm predicting it's coming. And it's going to take the form of a new Stonewall riots, because the last major riot where that demographic self-asserts itself through violence was 50 years ago. I think we're due for another one. We had a new Blue Marble. We need a new Stonewall. Okay, we've talked about the symbolic significance of subways and trains in the class war. And this topic is always intriguing because it's really shows you how much of this is story. And the level of narrative and story precludes it being real. What was the last thing he said? Neely's on the train. He's like, I'm going to hurt somebody on this train if I don't get fed. Yeah, this is just, again, Marxist street theater. He represents the underclass, the mentally ill, the underserved who just wants food. And the train represents capitalism. It represents a system that is out of control and it just needs to be stopped. That's why we've been seeing all these train derailments, specifically in Ohio, connecting with the movie White Noise, with a huge subtext about pollution, specifically the airborne toxic event being a byproduct of our lifestyles, and how we can't be like the Griswolds driving across America. No, we can't. That's not sustainable. If you've seen White Noise, the characters are templated off the Griswolds. I noticed this based on the visuals and the haircuts. And later, a few reviews came out and actually pointed out that that was actually one of his inspirations. But anyway, we've been looking at the role of the train in westward expansion, the Ohio derailments, the subway violence. They're dramatizing the class war with the Batman and the Joker movies. And this is all to connect the bigger story of the West and the knee of Western chauvinism on the neck of the world's poor. And that's what we really saw with the George Floyd event. The Joker movie, by the way, if you remember, it ends where he goes on TV and he shoots a talk show host. Now, this is fascinating. If you think about just the significance of the headshot on TV, like an assassination tied into a Batman film. But listen to this. So Joker gets to air his grievances on TV, and like Frank James, the subway shooter, who was like Joker, a subway shooter, he was lashing out against the system and said that he might have to go shoot some people. Well, Joker said, what do you over this live stream? Let me go ahead and hijack everything. I believe I've sent. Thank you for joining. Today is June the 19th, 2023. This is Infinite Plane Radio, and the main subject today is going to be Auto-Hoaxing Titanic Part 2. And I called it that before The Drudge made it their main headline. And what I'm referring to is the submersible that tours the wreckage of the Titanic, which has actually been one of the subjects that we've been covering for some time because of its symbolic value, how it represents the ship of state, capitalism, the West, and how it's been correlated with the sinking of the Twin Towers, the falling of the towers, both in the predictive programming of James Cameron's movie The Titanic, where it splits in two and sinks, each side capsizing vertically like one of the towers, complete with jumpers. And then two, Cameron was at the scene of the sunken Titanic on 9/11/2001. We've been connecting these dots for some time. And interestingly enough, right now, 619, this submersible that's exploring the Titanic has gone missing. And I'm looking into this, immediately thinking it's suspect. The symbolism of the Titanic is just too prevalent in the, quote, metascript for this to be anything other than an accident. Anything more than, there are accidents. There are mere accidents. But I don't think this is a mere lost thing. The timing of it's too much. So I look into it a little bit here, and it turns out that one of the passengers is the UK billionaire Hamish Harding. Now, if you don't know who Hamish Harding is, he was is the chairman of Action Aviation, and he went to space. He's one of these guys who went to space on Bezos' thing, Blue Origin. So what are the odds? He went to space, and now he's in this, in the abyss. And this is all very symbolic. When I said the significance of Cameron in 9/11, part of it is that he was filming a documentary in his own submersible. The documentary was called Ghosts of the Abyss. Revelation 9/11 is about the abyss and the deep sea, Challenger, the destroyer, Apollyon, Abaddon. And interestingly enough, he was in a submersible called the Deep Sea Challenger. So these connections are not spurious. We're looking at here as part of a big story. And you got somebody who's part of the space faking industry, which means that the whole thing is highly suspect. Again, British billionaire explorer feared among the missing on and it says the Titanic. So we have a interesting little bit of story here. Just sort of, again, we'll get into this as it develops, but just the fact that you have someone who's connected to the space faking industry makes it seem a little more in the direction of hoax. I always say fake until proven real, and we have to assess the available facts. Well, if one of the available facts is he's part of one of the world's premier traveling, I don't know what we'd call it. I was going to say carnival troupe, but basically it's a bunch of actors, actronauts. And if you're part of that, you're backstage. You're part of the green screened reality. So there's no way that this is an accident. Also, his name, initials HH. If you get deep in the symbolism, you'll find HH is very prevalent among 9/11 predictive programming. All right, let me see who's joined us. We are joined by Rocco Calzone, says Aloha Moon Day. Yeah, it is a moon day. Juneteenth again. I don't know anything significant yet to have come out of this, but the dates are also interesting, 619, because 9/11 and the 6/11, we see these numbers consistently, but the 6 and the 9 being, of course, the inverse of one another. But we're also approaching the solstice, which is the longest day of the year, the solstice, and that's going to be, I think, on Wednesday, the first day of summer, as we enter Cancer, and the symbol of Cancer is the 6-9. So there may be something there. You're also talking about a crab, an aquatic thing, and you could look at the submersible as like sort of a crustacean. We'll see how this thing pans out, but there's a drama unfolding. Joined by Junders Plunkett, Javo82, Zin Valis, thank you for joining. Lickety Split, looks like he passed out at his keyboard. I've seen that before. That's the forehead basically going from left to right across your keyboard there. KJSDFHD. Unless maybe you had some kind of a suddenly died reaction to a pokey. That's a thing again. I thought anti-vax was dead, but Joe Rogan brought it back by bringing out this Dr. Hotez, who seems to be another villain for the right wing. They're done being mad at Dylan Mulvaney. They're done being mad at Fauci. So now they got Dr. Hotez. So we'll talk about Dr. Hotez and what that means, how it's the current thing to be mad at that guy. And this idea about debating, debate me, bro. What does that really mean? And I've been looking closely at the arguments that people make in favor of this or that conspiracy, and whether or not a conspiracy theory is true, your argumentation ought to be sound at this point. We don't need to be making arguments from loaded questions. That causes experts to dodge you. We are joined here by X322, Osher, Frank Murr. Thank you for joining. Again, we are going to be live, open phones in just a few days. I officially get into my new place tomorrow, but on July 1st, I'll be in the IPS office. We actually have an office space that's going to be separate. It just has to be for a lot of reasons, mostly professional reasons. A separate office space has a lot of advantages, and I have one just down the street, lined up to jump into on the 1st, and it will make everything better as far as what we do here and what we have planned. 6079 Smith says, Audrey Hale shooting one of the teachers' last name was Dykehouse, not spelled that way, but pronounced that way. Well, do you remember the Club Q shooting? You had names like Rump Lover. I mean, names that didn't make any sense. If someone wants to go back and look at those names, like they were comical. Jokes, obviously jokes. I mean, this is the world stage, and the writers are very punny. They think they're clever. And sometimes they are. You're like, oh, look, Bilderberg. They're talking about regulating AI. You have the Chat GPT guy, Sam AI Man. I mean, it's Altman, but it looks like AI. And then you have, the singularity coined by John von Neumann, the new man. Everything is like that. So I'm just not surprised at all. The more interesting thing about the Audrey Hale shooting is that before she finished shooting the kids, she went into the chapel and she shot the stained glass image of Adam. So here you have a trans man shooting the first man. And this all has a strong parallel storyline it's mirroring from Stranger Things. Audrey Hale looks like Elle, who kills a bunch of kids. Elle kills number 1, the first created of the mind-controlled subjects that the show was about. And the whole show is about the Satanic Panic. And one of the stories that came out with this Audrey Hale shooting from the right is that this is some kind of a satanic panic situation, as in this is a satanic attack on a Christian church. Okay, it looks like we have been cut off unexpectedly. Now I'm just going to continue as though we have not been interrupted, and the recordings are always continuous, so there's nothing to worry about here. Okay, so Dr. Hotez, we will talk about this new villain and his debate with Robert F. Kennedy. Who was on Joe Rogan? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The wrong Jr. But RFK Jr., he's actually known as an environmental activist. He's kind of an environmentalist. He was full-blown Greta before there was a Greta. RFK Jr. even made the case for arresting non-believers. But he's the wrong Jr. Everyone is expecting Donald Trump and John F. Kennedy Jr. And now it's Donald Trump versus RFK Jr. How does this make any sense? Got Your Back Bears here from DLive. Okay, I'm glad you're all still here. It had an interruption on my side, no big deal. But I've learned from the past. I mean, the instant I got out of my main studio and I started having to be mobile, I realized I have to have a backup. Lickety Split says, Hotez is a trickster. Bow tie is a Masonic thing. I heard somewhere long ago. Now, Hotez is a trickster. He looks, I can agree with that. He looks like Bill Nye the Science Guy. The bow tie instantly discredits him as anything other than some kind of a deviant, in my opinion. But what do I know? I mean, Tucker Carlson has a bow tie. So are we going to say we can't trust Tucker Carlson? So, if we look past the bow tie, what we're really seeing here, I think, is a world stage character or persona, a dunking clown, someone for the right to be victorious over. I just think it's the current thing. This is who to be mad at. And he's too afraid to debate. Like, debate what? Like, what exactly is the point anymore? Vaxageddon didn't happen. And if your whole campaign is about ginning up sympathy for the supposed victims of people who are willingly doing it, it just seems like a lost cause. Like, you have to remember, the people that you are asserting to be victims don't see themselves as such. They're addicts. And it's very codependent of the anti-vaxxers to keep trying to save the vaxxers. You got to let people make their own mistakes. Just don't enable them. But joined by Synchromorpheus says, some Hunt for Red October connections as well. A missing submarine, which connects to the Baldwin Rust shooting. Fascinating connection. The Baldwin Rust shooting happened 45 minutes from here, so I was out of his range, but it centers around a chapel, and it's a Western. And these are two of the key features, chapel a Western, because we're talking about the death of the West, symbolized by the house, the burning house, which Ye referenced on his Burning Man ceremony Dawn Day and Dawn Day 2. This house was also symbolized in Westworld, the Whitechapel, where all the drama happened. This same house has made a number of appearances in various movies. It's a symbol for the West, the burning house. Again, an MLK reference, in fact. But it's interesting that Alec Baldwin is on the set of Rust, and he shoots Helena Hutchins, another HH, kind of like the billionaire who, Hamish Harding. Again, 88 has a lot of fascinating connections to this when you get in the numbers, but Helena Hutchins, 42, shot by Alec Baldwin. And she has connections to Hunt for Red October because she comes from the place where the book is situated, the movie. And this is a Tom Clancy, who also has his fingerprints all over 9/11 and all over the post-lockdown with the whole Division and Dark Winter thing, which we're still waiting on some of these. We're still waiting on the Fallout stuff and the Dark Winter and the nuclear part of the story. But for the most part, Hunt for Red October is another example of Tom Clancy as a meta-scripter kind of plugging into the big picture, and it has to do with the undetectable submarine. So this all ties into the nuking of the Pacific coast, likely Russians working with white nationalists, however it plays out. All of these are fascinating connections, and one more connection here is Alec Baldwin was known for dressing up as Trump. He portrayed Trump on SNL. And as such, he said it made him so sick that he began to wish for a meteor to hit the White House. So again, the White House, the Whitechapel, the chapel where the shooting happened, it's all correlating here. And for a meteor to hit the White House is kind of interesting for him to say that, because around the time of the Rust shooting, the movie Don't Look Up came out. And all the trailers were saying, in 6 months, 14 days, it's going to hit the earth. And 6/14, of course, is Trump's birthday. So it gets interesting because Alec Baldwin, the most Trump-deranged liberal in the world, shoots not only Helena Hutchins, but Joel Souza, who was born on Trump's birthday. So you have the bullet from his 44 hitting someone connected to Hunt for Red October, and of course the birth date 6/14 being correlated there with the wish for a meteor to hit the White House. And again, we're talking about symbolism. Okay, and that whole event was fascinating. The whole Rust shooting, how the gun got into his hands, and how the Hannah Reid, who handed him the weapon, had just been saying on her Facebook page she felt like she was going to have a fall from grace. She had a tattoo of a black widow on her stomach, if you recall. And during the cleanup of the event, when the crew were taking it down, one of them nearly lost an arm after being bitten by a spider. So there's some subtext, there's some story. I think it's all fake. I think it's all fake, and Alec Baldwin's a terrible crisis actor. Okay, continuing. Ollie Goering says, Trump versus Kennedy is a mind F towards the Q-sters. It really is. It forces them to do more mental gymnastics to keep on trusting the plan. I mean, they're so high on hopium, it doesn't matter. One of the theories put forth in the last few days is that John Fetterman is actually John F. Kennedy Jr. in disguise, doing a deep troll, just trolling the deep state like no one else. Like, he's right there with Joe Biden. He called Joe Biden a collapsed bridge, and people are like, wow, Joe Fetterman's lost his mind, he can't even talk. It's like, well, no, that's John F. Kennedy Jr., and he really got him there. That's where they're at. They will believe literally anything. It's actually pathetic and sad, and it needs to stop. And I've been looking into many of the promulgators of these QAnon doctrines, and it's a government-created religion. And they created an extremist religion with a domestic violent extremist core so they can take out any critics to big government power, any critics to this new one world religion of, scientism combined with transhumanism and everything else. There will be no resistance because of Q. The Q is a pacifier. And this is Operation Trust the Plan. We all know what this is, but it's still going. But what someone said, it must mess with their heads. Look, you couldn't mess with their heads anymore. There's going to have to be a Anonymous to help some of these individuals get out of that cult, which it really is. And I recommend looking into cult deprogramming, and we'll do some live streams on this topic because it's really intriguing when you think about it, because you find out that the mass media uses all the techniques of groupthink, mind control, group coercion, everything. That the mass media is, in fact, every news network is just a face of Big Brother, and Big Brother's a big narcissist, and it's all by design. Linda Curtis says, didn't Mr. Rogers wear a bow tie also? He did. Well, it might be a Mandela effect. You're right. Lickety Split says, victim is an HH. Yeah, we're still waiting for more information, again, about the billionaire Hamish Harding, chairman of Action Aviation. So not only is he an astronaut, but he's supposedly lost in the submarine, which Synchro Morpheus points out is a connection to Hunt for Red October. Lost submarine. Fascinating. Psy-Obstacle says the West is falling with its currency, reset incoming digital dollar. Now, a couple of days ago, someone had mentioned how the number 4,000 was kind of standing out. There was a 33-year-old male, unidentified, so I don't even know why this makes the news, but a 33-year-old male fell to his death from the skywalk at Grand Canyon, 4,000 feet. Now, again, this could just be a real story, a 33-year-old just falling off, but my question is, why is it reported? Is there a deeper significant meaning, as we often see with these similar events? And I thought skywalk was kind of an interesting clue there, possibly. Anyway, someone had made a note of it. What's with the 4,000 feet? Is there a deeper meaning? I don't know. However, coincidentally, the Titan submersible, the one that's lost right now, is capable of going down 4,000 meters. So there's a 4,000 kind of tied into it. Again, 33-year-old fell 4,000 feet to his death from the Grand Canyon skywalk in Arizona. Probably taking a selfie. Death by selfie. That is a thing. It's a very common thing. It's kind of sad. Okay, let's go ahead and continue. We were talking about the HOTES a little bit. Again, anti-vax is kind of coming back. It comes in waves. They used to have the waves of the pandemic. And I remember at the very beginning they would say, okay, you auto-hoaxers are saying it's fake, but wait until the second wave. I'm like, we haven't even seen the first wave. But you do have waves of anti-vaxxers all the time. Gotcha back says, glad to see you doing well. I've been gone doing family stuff. Yeah, you can never do enough of that. That's the thing, is pulling yourself out of their filtered matrix world where you're programmed to give a damn about what they tell you to, and you're kind of you can only care about so many things in a day, and they get you to deprioritize those closest to you, and then you care about crisis actors, and then when those close to you tell you they're crisis actors, you end up hating those close to you. So you have people who are like, they're choosing Robbie Parker over you because of your opinions, and you're like, this guy's a government actor. Okay, let's go ahead and continue through the list here. Exalt says, is it me or have they been making Rust forever? Yeah, actually, Rust is back in production, and I think one of Helena Hutchins's, maybe her husband, is actually helping Ellick finish it. Psyopsical says, I had my money on Fetterman being Norm MacDonald in a mask. I hear Norm MacDonald. I do hear him in Fetterman. But he, I can also get where they're kind of hearing JFK Jr., but who isn't JFK Jr. these days? That's the real question. Who isn't? Like Marjorie Taylor Greene, had they ruled her out? It's insane. But this is how the cult works. We've talked about it quite a bit. Psyopsical says, the cult says Nisara Gasara welfare system is here as of today. All the military footage. Yeah, if you didn't know, National Guard and Active Reserve will do their annual drills, usually in June. So for 2 weeks, the weekend warriors will get together and they will perform drills. And they put their tanks on trains, they send them around, they have planes going around, troops marching. They, preventive maintenance, checks and services, make sure the vehicles are working. They just basically activate for 2 weeks. They check everything, inspect everything, they do their inventories, and then they go home. Now, every year, the conspiracy theorists say, oh, the military's taking over. I saw tanks on a train. They all do it. Marfugal News is like hiding under his bed right now, tweeting about it. He's like, yeah, there's a bunch of planes. And then you have the QAnoners who are like, oh no, that Osprey's got JFK Jr. He's coming down to fight the deep state. Like, they live in this fantasy world, and it's a lot of fan fiction, which isn't all that different from what religion has always done. It's provided fan fiction. It's provided mythologies and a framework for people to interpret the events of the day. And right now, among the conspiracy theorists, they're worried that, of course, it's going down right now. But funnily, the Q cult believes that at the end of this road is free money for everybody. It's a big welfare thing. It's basically what I called the other day. It's a Ponzi scheme. You join Q, invest all your social capital, trust the plan, throw it all in there, and when the Great Awakening happens, everybody gets a big payday. That's what they're waiting for. And they think they're in early on the plan. And along with the QAnon Ponzi scheme, you had a lot of actual Ponzi schemes, not talking about like NFTs or any of that other scammy, grifty stuff, but a lot of scams all over the place. And a lot of people were buying. In fact, I saw this one AI-generated John F. Kennedy Jr., who looked pretty good. He looked like he hadn't aged. He looked about 45, 46 maybe. And he said, and this was his Telegram account, so if you go to John F. Kennedy Jr.'s Telegram, he's like, the reason I haven't aged isn't adrenochrome, which is what the other side uses. I use this. And you can buy this product, some skin product. Okay, let's continue here. John Cordone says, are you taking calls? We will start taking calls later this week, once I'm in my new office. I just don't have the capacity at the moment. And I am getting into an office, and I have a lot of plans for it, and no later than the 1st. In fact, if you're a supporter on Patreon, that's exactly what it's all going to on this next cycle. I'm going to be getting into an office space, and we're going to start implementing a number of our plans, specifically with what we're assigning our reporters to go do. Oswaldo says, waiting for the Rust movie will turn you to Rust, waiting for the premiere. Yeah, I'm not waiting on it. I still think the whole thing was fake. And I think that that's a great link Synchro Morpheus brought up, that this missing submarine has something to do with Hunt for Red October. And you know, the code for a missing nuke is Broken Arrow. And there have been 32 Broken Arrows, so we're still waiting for the 33. Gotcha Back Bear says, I don't think Fetterman is McDonald. Norm was pretty based. Yeah, Norm was intentionally funny all the time. Fetterman is kind of funny in a cringy way. Have you all heard that new rapper that everyone's talking about? I was listening to, of all people, Ben Shapiro, reading lyrics from this new rapper. I think her name is Sexy Red. And she has this song called Pound Town. I watched it, and look, I'm not going to criticize a musical genre I'm not a fan of because I'm not a musicologist. I respect art. And I watched this video. I wasn't offended. It was just like a female rapper doing what the male rappers always do, just kind of inverted. But I recognized her cadence and her delivery. Again, I think I got her name right. Does everyone know who I'm talking about? I believe it's, yes, Sexy Red and Pound Town. Okay, well, now you may want to look up her music, you may not. I don't think you'll be able to avoid it. It's that viral. But when I heard her cadence, I'm like, this is Alex Stein. This is literally Alex Stein level rapping. And now she's like the top rapper in the world. But if you listen to any of Stein's freestyle city council raps and put it next to Sexy Red, honestly, I think he's better. It's like she's actually kind of stealing some of his shine. She's actually kind of stealing some of his cringes, his cringy inflections. I mean, it's like I said, I'm not going to criticize it. I call it cringe-ertainment. I mean, we are watching it, right? Plus, I'm a free speech absolutist. Lickety Split says, yeah, she's all over Twitter. That's probably where I caught the mind virus. And then I tune into Shapiro. I spy on the left and the far right. I check out what all these different controlled op agents or just basic worldview guardrails and gatekeepers. I try to keep up with what they're talking about, and that's what they're mad about right now. They think it represents the end of Western civilization. Like they're always such church ladies, pearl clutchers. Ollie Goering says Stein and Sexy Red collab. You know, I caught this video with who was remember all those women, all those female Celebrities were like in red dresses very conspicuously leading up to the Super Bowl, where Rihanna comes down dressed in red, blood red, for the mystery Babylon, Super Bowl fertility rite. Well, Doja Cat at that time was completely covered in red except for her eyes. And I remember that was noted, but I just watched a video on this morning. And the uploader said that it represents what they call, and this is like frazzle drip stuff, eyes without a face, where they totally skin their victims, their adrenochrome victims. And it's only the eyes that are left, and that's what Doja Cat represented. Just a side note. For some reason, I was watching some of these videos on Rumble that are they get into that area of adrenochrome and the elite being blood drinkers, the nightmare realm. Like I describe the world stage as accepted by the dominant majority, the world stage as you see it through your screen. That's the dream world. And most people are content with that. That's why they seem like they're asleep to those who wake up and realize, okay, this is all BS. But the people who wake up to it being BS, they wake up to a nightmare version. They don't actually wake up. Their dream becomes a nightmare, where they're actually recognizing that things are much worse than the dreamers realize, and they can't wake anybody up. And then on the other side, you have the woke pilled, who have the same set of delusions, just from the opposite side of the political spectrum. Gotcha Back Bear said, Tim, you're right. Last time I called in, you were talking about Stein, who sold out to Blaze TV. You called it. He's a 100% shill. Oh, yes, I had the inside scoop because he was working at Dark Matter for a little while. And I was told by a producer, probably CIA, in all honesty, that's my honest opinion. I was basically told, yeah, he's going to be blowing up. I was like, why do we have this guy? He doesn't know about conspiracy. So like, oh, well, he's going to blow up very fast. So they put him in at the helm. I mean, the thing fell apart, or he left, or he quit for some reason before, but it was the case that I was told that, yeah, he's going to be the next Alex Jones or something. And I was like, weird, but kind of makes sense. It makes perfect sense. If you think about the trajectory of the conspiracy theorist Alex Jones and how he emerged from the Bill Hicks, outrageous personality, Alex Jones, still outrageous, but it's kind of the same persona. And Stein is very much similar. AngstG says, wasn't that a Billy Idol song? Yes, Billy Idol, and if you look at Billy Idol, he's got all the same symbolism, one-eye stuff that you would expect. Like, I'm not saying they're wrong. The people who are analyzing what we're looking at here and stuff, I don't know. Like, it's really kind of weird to me. It's like, do we make an exception here? Because everything else we see in predictive programming turns out to happen. And a lot of predictive programming is it's about this sick, cannibalistic, satanic elite. I mean, one of the more egregious examples of this, and I think this is actually how it works, is the movie called Daybreakers with, is it Sam Harris? Daybreakers, where the vampires rule the world. There's some kind of vampire bat virus. It actually starts off with a sign that says, it all started with the vampire bat. And it's about a pandemic that shuts down the world. The movie came out in 2009, and it's set in 2019. But it's about how the elite are vampires or something, but that they start drinking synthetic blood. And then you find out that the ones at the very top like the blood that has been extracted from people who are experiencing terror and fear. They say it doesn't taste as good without the fear in it. And they have these scenes, Matrix-like stuff, like Matrix pods of just thousands of people plugged into these blood extraction machines. And it got me thinking about, like cows, their milk being extracted, but it's just humans and their blood. And it got me thinking, this is how it actually is. But they're not taking literal blood. They don't want your actual body fluids. They're taking your louche. They're taking your soul in doses, little by little, as they can extract it from you. It really is a soul-sucking matrix, I think. Much like you encounter people in life, emotional manipulators, ones who can, quote, drain you. Well, there is an energetic exchange happening, I do believe. And I think that the elite are, in fact, the biggest vampire. It's a network of vampires in that sense. And that's what I mean when I say that the mass media is a narcissistic construct, because the narcissist is in fact a vampire, and it feeds off of its underlings, its lackings, its victims. Okay, let me continue. Lickety Split says, when I was looking into Pizzagate in 2016, I ended up reading about the old queens and kings in Europe that would make their servants skin themselves for fun. Right, well, what I'm wondering here is, are these just fake stories? Like, have there always been fake stories about the elite? Or is there a basis in truth? What is it? Count Dracula and the aristocrats and the idea that they are, I think it could all just be metaphor. It could just be slander. It could be libel. Okay, let's continue here. Oh, let me bring up one more point on this matter, because we have mentioned how the founder of the Patriot Front's name, Thomas Rousseau, figures into the French Revolution, that name being the name of one of the philosophers whose ideas led to it. French Revolution, we're talking about the elite having their heads chopped off. And who wants all of the elite to have their heads chopped off more than the QAnon, than the far-right Patriot Front types? They believe that the elite are bad and need to have their heads chopped off. So it could just be propaganda, is what I'm saying. And let's not also kid ourselves into thinking that you can actually isolate the bad actors in the world and eliminate that and purify things. And that's one of the big false promises of this Q movement and of many religions anyway, that you can save the world. That's kind of absurd, because if you go to your local prisons or jails, it's not going to be filled up with millionaires and billionaires who are doing all these horrible things. Just regular people. You're more likely to be adrenochrome harvested by a poor person or in a subway than by a Bill Gates. Okay, now politics and alien invasions, the schism in everything. I wanted to bring this up really quick because there's this cliche, and I guess maybe it was Reagan that really started this. I've heard Bill Clinton say something similar, but Reagan said, "I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world." And the notion that an alien invasion would unite mankind, I think, is trite, and it fails to account for the partisan divide that would place the left wing, the leftist cult of scientism, on the pro-alien side, and the right wing and the conspiracy theorists would be on the anti-alien side. So in other words, the right, they would view the aliens as demons or something from another dimension. They would actually open fire. The left would see the aliens as saviors, and they would beg for technological upgrades. So I'm just pointing it out that the alien agenda for one world government, government by technocracy, government by replacing traditional religious beliefs with scientism, this is not a unifying agenda at all. Yep, Second Amendment for the aliens. And it's kind of interesting that the same dynamic exists with regard to illegal aliens as it does for intergalactic alien invaders. Like, the left embraces the invaders. Why is that? It's all very interesting when you look at the dynamics between left and right, how it's ultimately about their relationship to power. But in this specific example, aliens to the left are actually a replacement for angels. And we've described this before. Angels are like androgynous. They're light beings. They can ascend to heaven. They're like better versions of man. Man stripped of carnal desires. Man stripped of the ape. Evolved. Aliens, grays, genderless, raceless, technologically advanced. They can ascend into heaven, or space as we call it today. And the alien mythology today has a lot of hybrids, people who are mixed with aliens, alien abductions. And that's just that's Old Testament. That's Genesis stuff. Nephilim and angels messing with human beings. That's pretty similar. But it's the same thing. It's a replacement myth. And the idea, too, that technology does lead to salvation, that has been introduced, and it's a core part of this transhumanist ideology, is that there is a salvation, possible immortality, which is what many are actually thinking about or talking about. When you got these creeps like Peter Thiel, who gets blood transfusions from younger, I don't know, I guess, I'm not really sure, I don't want to speculate, but he is definitely a vampire. And others talk about digital immortality. And a lot of the programming on Netflix, like one of the great ones is called From Beyond. It's a terrible movie, but it's a great example of how there's this new Earth, but you can't go in your human body because it pollutes. because it's violent. It needs things. But if you have your brain removed and you put it in a robot body, you can go to this new planet. And it's perfect. It's a perfect description of how things work, because to buy into this big program, you pretty much got to not think. Gotcha Back Bear says, I think they're letting aliens in so they can increase the debt bubble. Any thoughts? That Cloward Piven thing? Yes, absolutely. The border situation is analogous to the vax situation, and it's always about attacking your borders, just like the Second Amendment. It's about self-defense. It's about national defense, home defense, and then defense at the level of your epidermis. And at what level do you say no to the state? At what level do you say, yes, big brother, protect me. Give me your immune system. Give me your police force. You know, there's this pattern I've noticed, left and right. And again, the left loves big brother. They worship big government. It is religion. That's why I think it's funny when the right Christians will talk about communists as godless and atheists. It's like, no, they're actually very religious. They're very religious, in fact. And their God construct is pretty much the globe and scientism. But it is a construct. It is a religion. It's not a scientific paradigm. Joined by G33. Thank you for joining. Tony Driscoll says, wait until they say aliens brought a virus to Earth. Well, you know, August of 2020, Putin won the vaccine race, and he bragged about it, just like they won the space race with the Sputnik in 1957. But in 2020, he released the Sputnik 5. That was the name of the vaccine. At the same time, out of Russia, a movie came out called Sputnik. And it was about an alien in the form of a virus that comes down to the cosmonauts. And it grows and it takes up residence in their esophagus. And when they sleep, it comes out and it hunts human victims. And they actually point out that the government's made deals with the aliens to give them prisoners to feed off of, because the aliens don't just eat your meat like they're just not carnivores. They actually terrify you and they feed off your stress hormones. So more of this adrenochrome kind of narrative was brought into the story here. But yeah, the whole thing was about the aliens being a virus. And it's interesting because that was during the lockdowns, and I had just gone to Roswell, and I wanted to go see, because the aliens landed in Corona Field. So from the beginning, there's been this connection between alien invasions and viruses. Angst G says, From Beyond is an H.P. Lovecraft story about awakening the pineal gland. Yeah, you know, I think Lovecraft doesn't get enough credit for his science fiction. People think of him as horror, but no, he was more sci-fi, but he got into the scary part of the scientific, or rather science fiction hypotheticals. Like, what if the aliens don't like us? Or what if they were here first and they're beneath the ocean and they're telepathically in connection with a lot of people and they're going to wake up someday? All right, let's see here. Linda Curtis says, aliens will die if they eat us. They will be allergic. Lickety Split says, chemtrails protect us from being eaten. Yeah, well, there are no chemtrails, and this is good news. This is great news. Like, imagine you go to the doctor and you have a lot of concerns, and he's like, oh, no, you got nothing to worry about. Like, you would love that guy. You'd be like, oh, this is the best news ever. You would share the joy with him. And I'm like, hey, you have nothing to worry about. The chemtrail theory is actually based on a loaded question, and it hasn't been established there's a spray, but there's actually a natural phenomenon that explains what you're seeing. And instead of them saying thank you for disabusing me of my fears, they instead attack me. And they attack me in defense of what? They're psychological abusers who convince them of something that's not true, of something that's actually horrifying to contemplate. So no, it's good news. I'm sorry to be the bearer of good news, truthers. Don't shoot me, but I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around some certain beliefs. But we have to remember, there are truther orthodoxies that they want you to believe. There's a reason why they don't censor certain, quote, conspiracy theories. There's a reason why they promote certain ones, because these ones are controlled and controllable, and they don't contradict the worldview. They need you to believe certain things. So, in other words, chemtrail theory is approved for your consumption. They don't censor it. It's the climate change phobia for the independent thinkers. Because most conspiracy theorists realize that climate change is a huge joke. Yet the government says, well, no, you still need to be afraid of the sky. We still need you in a state of perpetual dread. We don't want you enjoying your day. We want you to be agoraphobic, not algoraphobic. We need you to fear open spaces. So they say, no, it's not chemtrails. I mean, it's not contrails. They're chemicals. Again, it's all just a hoax. All right, Lickety Split says, man's ability to control weather is godlike. Well, I think that's what they want. They want you to think that they can press a button and blow up the world, like Oppenheimer. They want you to think that they do control the weather, that weather controls a thing. And this is the fundamental premise. The basic idea behind climate change rests on anthropogenic climate change. Man causes it. And if we accept that premise, then I think we lose the argument, or rather we cede the argument. And the chemtrail theory is actually based on anthropogenic climate change, just by a different cause. Although it's not even a different cause, because now it's gone full circle, where the climate change scientists are saying that condensation trails cause the world to heat up. Although they're suggesting that they might just ask the airlines to change their altitudes and avoid conditions that would be conducive to the creation of condensation trails, because it's not a spray. But moving on, I don't want to spend too much time on it. I just think that it's important to know why something's fake, or know why we're calling something fake. And before you can claim something is not the right explanation, you have to somehow debunk it, or at least make an attempt. Arguments from ignorance or just dismissing it is not enough. And I want to do away with a lot of these ideas just by exposing the flawed methodology and doing some basic research to fill in the gaps on information, what we might be lacking. Like the people who don't believe in gorillas, like that can be fixed. There are people who don't believe in koala bears. That can all be fixed. Kevin Mooring says, Texas blackout happening because of the heat? Yeah, solstice is in a couple of days. That's coming up on Wednesday. Okay, I had a note here. Oh yeah, rise of the off-the-grid superman. Because I've been thinking about this truth or orthodoxy question, and how there are so many things that are just assumed to be true. Like, okay, we're being poisoned by chemtrails. The pokies are damaging everybody. And the food we're eating is bad. The water's screwing with our hormones. Like everything is literally toxic and bad. Ultrasound has destroyed your brain. So from not even cradle to grave, from conception to grave, like everything is just toxic, and you're just being hammered down by the environment, and the man or the system, the matrix, has got you. So then my question is, what if there was someone out there, or a group of people, or a village somewhere off the grid? No Western medicine, no science, no media. What would they all be like? In other words, are we accepting the premise that we've all been damaged, that we've all been irreparably harmed and altered, and that we'd all be so much better were it not for these conditions that truthers rail about? Like, were it not for chemtrails and the pokies and what's in the water, I would be 7 feet tall, I'd have an IQ of 200, and I'd spend my free time building cathedrals with my free hands with precision that modern machinery can't make, because I've got, these godlike, these abilities that have been suppressed. Like, I kind of don't know. Like, are we looking at a world of people who are just utterly damaged by everything, or is that in the heads of the truthers? Like, I even question fluoride in the water. I really do. Because they say, oh, fluoride in the water makes you docile. And they put it there to calm you down. It's like, I was drinking regular tap water probably until after I left the military, and I was anything but docile. Like, it didn't work on me, if that's the case. Going through comments here, let's see here. Lickety Split says, wait, the food is trash though, I'm triggered. Right. Well, I'm not an advocate for any of these things. I'm just saying here that there's this big composite picture that we're all being oppressed through every possible way. And I'm just saying, like, do we have any examples of people who didn't go through that gauntlet? And are they substantially, visibly better off or not? Just questioning. By the way, the new Twitter account, the new YouTube channel is youtube.com/Infinite Plane Society. It's the official one. I got a message here from Lynn Ertel. Signed, sealed, and delivered. She says, Discord was a honeypot from day one. So what is Rumble? Wow. Does anybody here think Rumble is a similar operation as Discord, where they managed to get the people who can see and think clearly to self-segregate, to quarantine their mind viruses while they study you like a petri dish, and then they undermine you after infiltrating you, then they pull the plug? Because that's what it looks like. Alt Easy says, the Amish are non-tech people, pretty healthy. I'll have to look into that. I'll have to look into it. For some reason, I'm not really feeling it. I think there might be some darker side to the Amish. We'll see. I'll have to look. But I'm curious. Is there a big difference? Or is that just a lot of negativity? Like, a lot of truthers think that NPCs are incapable of waking up, or it's very solipsistic at a point where they question, do they even think? Are they even there? And I think it's important not to fall into these traps of thinking like you're one of the top of the capstone looking at the sheeple, because we're at the bottom of this thing. We're kind of in this together, and all of us emerged from total mental entrapment and not slavery is the word, but I guess, yeah, your mind is confined by a lot of false explanations. Nobody here had all the answers coming in. So I'm like trying to scrub, not necessarily scrub the negativity, but I want to examine a lot of the conspiracy theories that people just accept to be true. Like, I really think chemtrails needs to go. I think the chemtrail theory has some validity, I guess. I understand why people would arrive at that, why you would think it's plausible, but I think it's toxic gravy, as Owen Benjamin would say. And I brought up Owen Benjamin because someone had asked him something on his Twitter account. They asked him, do you think that Elon Musk is perhaps not aware that space is fake? Like, in other words, does Elon Musk get the benefit of the doubt? What do you all think? Do you think that Elon Musk gets the benefit of the doubt when it comes to space being fake? Do you think it's possible that he's actually a good guy, because you can agree with him on everything except for, that whole space fakery thing kind of makes him seem shady, but maybe he doesn't know. And I saw this discussion on Twitter on Owen Benjamin's feed, and I thought that's an interesting question. Is it possible that he doesn't know? So I've been giving it some thought. And in my view, the bigger picture of Musk, the Devil's Avenger armor, the space program itself being the modern face of Mystery Babylon, and all the other symbolism attached to it, I find it hard to believe. But here was the actual question that was asked. Mike Oxbig said, do you leave open any possibility in your mind that Elon still believes it's a ball and that his Tesla is floating through space? Peter W. says no. Yep. Owen Benjamin, though, says, yeah, it's very possible. And I don't. I responded with, I don't. There's no way Pope Elon has plausible deniability. He's too involved in the process, not to mention the satanic occult aspect of space sex as it pertains to thelemic sex magic and the androgynous new god. The number 42, which Musk is always referencing, that's Satan. Starman is Mr. Satan, the guy in the Tesla Roadster. So I don't believe that he has any plausible deniability. He buys the Devil's Avenger costume, the red armor with the ram's head and the upside-down cross on Halloween from a store called Abracadabra. Everything there suggests a very refined understanding of Kabbalistic symbolism and the connection of the Emperor, who Musk represents, and Mars, Ares, the ram. So no, he doesn't get a pass. In my opinion, he has to know it's fake. HLG says if he doesn't know, is it because of ignorance or nescience? If he doesn't know, it's because he's insulated. He doesn't want to know. It's on a need-to-know basis. But at this point, you would have to be completely off the grid to not know of the arguments against believing in space travel. or at least the refutations. And you can't erase the fact that when Starman was in space, Musk came out and he laughed, and he said, "It must be real because it looks so fake." Like somehow that's a spell. That's some kind of word magic, because everyone heard that and like, yeah, must be real because it looks so fake. I'm like, wait, that's an argument for saying that cartoons, or, I mean, what kind of statement is that? It's got to be magic. Sleight of mind. Javo82 says Musk has AI bots like Tony Stark. Oh yeah, he is Tony Stark. Tony Stark, Iron Man. Iron is associated with Mars. They found the emblem from the House of Stark, Game of Thrones, on Mars. And it's the Iron Throne. Iron's the metal associated with Mars. Tony Stark, Iron Man. Very interesting. The falcon-headed god of Mars in the Egyptian pantheon, the one they worship, is the association you get with the Falcon rockets. And the whole Mars program is a cover for the Age of Mars, the Aeon of Horus. It's not about taking you to Mars. It's about making Earth Mars, which means sustainability under domed fiefdoms. It's really neo-feudalism. That's what's coming, in my opinion. That's why I call him Pope Elon. Kevin Mooring says, I bet there's this secret space travel society. You know, here's what I actually think. I think that Musk has secretly built underground tunnels, Hyperloop, and he has a Mars base. And that his super rich friends take vacations to Mars, and they think they're elite, and they're paying millions, billions possibly. And they're staying out on Mars, where there probably are slaves and servants, just like that Dr. Robert Knight, or former CIA Robert Knight. He was like, yeah, there are children being sent to Mars to be slaves. And he said this on InfoWars. And NASA's PR actually responded. They denied it. NASA denies that it's running a child slave colony on Mars. Washington Post. No, NASA is not hiding kidnapped children on Mars. Well, I'm sorry, but why would they even have to mention this? I mean, Robert David Steele, coincidentally, he died after raising a bunch of money for a tour across America. He died of the COVID. But Robert David Steele, CIA, he said that NASA was running a child slave colony on Mars, and that NASA said it wasn't true. But it's no different than Epstein Island. I'm just saying it's like an Epstein Island-like retreat for the super rich. And this is also interesting too, if you think about how Epstein was a teacher at a school with A.G. Barr's father, Donald Barr. So Donald Barr and Epstein work at a school around teenagers together, and Barr writes Gothic fiction or Gothic romance. One of them is called Space Relations. Now, Space Relations is about islands where teenagers are kept as sex slaves. Space Relations, a slightly Gothic interplanetary tale, is a space opera novel by Donald Barr, father of A.G. William Barr, published in 1973. Now, the thing about it is, the book is totally depraved, but it's about sex slaves on space islands. It's just like the Epstein Island story. And this guy worked with Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein and Barr, very interesting. Gets even weirder when you look into the STD called the Epstein-Barr virus, and its main symptom, the Alice in Wonderland syndrome, which has to do with time-space distortions. And it got me thinking about the name of his book, Space Relations. Like, I think there's a storyline here, or there's a subtext. But again, the book was roundly criticized, considered to be insufferably pretentious, according to Vice. Space Relations saw increased public attention after Barr's former employee Jeffrey Epstein died in a jail cell. And the conspiratorial corners of the internet saw similarities between violent sexual depictions in Space Relations and Epstein's sex trafficking activities and obsessions. Right, conspiratorial corners of the internet have made these connections. Right. You know, I love how they just dismiss it. It's like a magic wand. You just say conspiratorial and it disappears. Linda Curtis says, how long does it take to travel to Mars? Kids to adults, LOL. Yeah, I consider this. And when you go to Mars, Like, let's say you're very rich and brainwashed and you're friends with Musk. You throw some money at him. He's going to say, oh, no, we use wormholes. So the Hyperloop experience will feel like a wormhole. That explains how you get to Mars in 8 minutes. And it's really just somewhere beneath Nevada. But you're going through a tunnel, kind of like Willy Wonka sending you to the chocolate factory. I mean, Musk has that Willy Wonka eccentricity. He even bought Gene Wilder's house. And he was even toying with the idea of starting a candy company called the Boring Company, or the Boring Candy, after his boring company, the Drilling Company. Now, there's one more interesting connection here. Do you know what the drill is called that they use to tunnel beneath the Earth for the Hyperloop? It's called the Alice. Yes, the Alice Tunnel Boring Machine, the Alice TMB. And supposedly, it has nothing to do with Alice in Wonderland. Supposedly. Supposedly it's just the name of someone who designed it. But then the other side of it too is the first person to ever conceptualize space travel was Lewis Carroll, who described a situation where if you were to drill a hole through the antipodes of the Earth, let's say just drill a hole to China, or bore a hole with your boring company, you would be able to fall through the Earth in 42 minutes. From acceleration to deceleration, you pop out the other side 42. So there's your 42, connected with space travel, connected with Alice in Wonderland, connected with this underground fake space travel. And even the story Alice in Wonderland has her what? Falling through the rabbit hole, falling down the zero gravity situation, frictionless travel. John Cordone says Epstein is another character in the metascript. Most of the elite are demonic reptilian vampires wearing skin suits. Everybody knows that. It's one of my favorite arguments. Everybody knows. Hey, everybody knows Timmy fell down the well. We actually dealt the Mandela effect a death blow the other day. Didn't mean to, but one of its proponents had said that the auto-hoaxers are gatekeeping the Mandela effect. And he put out this rant. He's like, you're not going to stop me from misinforming the masses. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Mr. Mandela, but nobody in their right mind, and that's probably the starting point there for why he doesn't get this. Nobody in their right mind can claim Mandela effect is gatekept. It's the most accessible, mainstream, click-friendly conspiracy theory out there. And if you don't believe me, watch the movie. Everybody knows about the Mandela effect because it's not suppressed. It's not gatekept. And if I've had any role in stopping anybody from falling into that, my reach isn't enough to have affected his sub count. Flower says, is this live or a replay? This is actually a replay. The timing is interesting. It's 6:19 p.m., June 19th, 2023. You can just subscribe, and when you get the newsletter, I will send the link so you can listen to it from the beginning if you emerge halfway through, or if you do come in during a replay. This isn't actually a replay. Javo82 says, Hotez looks like Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, his mustache was really standing out to me as being something like a character, like no serious person would wear a bow tie with that mustache, unless you wanted to look like a mad scientist or something. I don't know. It's too kooky. I'm not buying it. Again, main topic, Titanic 2. This was a headline from the Drudge Report, stolen from me. Titanic 2. About the billionaire Brit among the missing. We're talking about a submersible taking a trip to visit the scene of the sunken Titanic, getting lost. And it's still lost as of right now, the Titan submersible. And we were talking about this in connection with Hunt for Red October, missing submarine. Very interesting. Again, the reason why this is so significant to me, it gets even deeper now I think about it, is Tom Clancy, Hunt for Red October. Well, his Sum of All Fears contains copious predictive programming for 9/11. So here you have James Cameron at the scene of the Titanic. 9/11 happens. Up in space, Frank Culbertson, the only American astronaut in the ISS that day, is listening to an audiobook of Tom Clancy's Sum of All Fears. He looks down and he says he sees 9/11 happening. And he thinks, wow, it's just like the book. So here you have another Tom Clancy reference on 9/11. And again, it just reaffirms there's something here. 9/11, he's in space, Cameron's on the ground, and now the missing submarine, another Tom Clancy reference. Flower says, best show. Hey, appreciate it. And we're only going to get better because we're going to be taking calls on the regular. I have a schedule now that's going to be implemented morning and evening. And we have a lot of things that we're going to be producing overall, Infinite Plane Radio, all of our reporters. But I'm getting into an office here very soon. In fact, I'm scheduling something here. It's probably going to be on the 1st, but no later than July 4th. We will be 100% firing on all cylinders, open phones, 24/7 live stream. We'll be expanding to more platforms, and we'll be really, I think, organized in a way that we can do more regular things like interviews. I have a series that I want to do of panel discussions on the topic of synchronicity. Because even though I knock the Mandela effect as being nonsensical, toxic malinformation, it's malware for the mind. I think it is. I think it's meant to disrupt objectivity in media deconstruction and turn you into a subjectivist. I think that's what it actually does. And I've thought this for some time. But I think behind this idea of these seeming glitches in the matrix, there are actual, I would consider to be glitches, which would be synchronicities, which are meaningful coincidences that could not be contrived. You couldn't have a third-party, shadowy government agency in any way contriving these. Because many have said, well, maybe the government is involved in messing with us with the Mandela effect, and they're changing the physical objects. And I'm saying that synchronicity isn't something that could be done in the physical world to cause these things to happen. These are things that unfold in time and space. So it's, to me, and I think it's a natural phenomenon. I don't think it's magical thinking. I don't think it's apophenia. I don't think these coincidences are insignificant. We're taught that the universe is meaningless and nothing is meaningful, and these are all just examples of human ego trying to make it seem like it matters. But I think it's the opposite. I think that everything is actually intrinsically meaningful, and meaning is what connects everything. It makes a lot of sense, especially when you look into the role of propaganda in keeping us all entranced and focused on the same vision. But anyway, I do think that there is something legitimate to discuss around this idea of what we would consider to be glitches in the matrix or insights into the fakeness of it, or getting into that area of auto-hoaxing reality itself. And I think Mandela effect is a wrong turn. And I think it's very interesting considering the role of what appears to be magic, group magic ritual, occult magic rituals in plain sight conveyed through the mass media. And I have this theory that if magic, or what we term magic, is an attempt to generate fortuitous synchronicity through actions or rituals, and that's by definition, that is what it is, then it would seem that mass media would be integrating all of us into these group rituals. And the answer, and the question why would be, the answer to the question would be, our natural capacity to manifest via the medium of synchronicity is being collectively harnessed. That's what I mean when I say, energy extraction matrix or Loosh matrix. I mean, this is all hypothetical, but it's worth having a conversation about. So my point is, I'm not just trying to downplay the significance of things when I say the Mandela effect is a big hoax. If anything, it's a very gate-kept version and stripped-down version of synchronicity, which kind of collectivizes it. It makes it less personal. Junder says, Mandela effects used to be real. We shifted realities again. Well, okay, the fundamental fallacy behind the Mandela effect, I think, is the loaded question. But there's all kinds of reasons why it works, and we're working on a documentary on this very subject. And we'll go into depth about it. We talked about it the other day. Okay, next here. I got this tweet from Seek the Truth 101, Rambo. Good channel, 48,000 subs. And he asks this question: Where are the planes spreading the chemtrails taking off from? Another dimension. I mean, it's funny, but yeah, where are they? Where are they coming from? If the planes spreading chemtrails aren't from the airports, and a lot of people answered the question. Some suggested it was military jets, drones. Johnny Danger said, "I would like to know the answer as well. How can these airplanes get clearance from any airport? Are the white hats letting it happen?" And my answer was, I think there's a reason to believe that chemtrail theory is false and nothing is being sprayed. Again, it's the loaded question. His question is, where are the planes spraying the chemicals coming from? That question contains the premise that there is a spray. And again, if you start from there, everything else is going to somehow just make sense. And that's how they've been tricking a lot of truthers into accepting what I consider to be truther orthodoxies, which are alternative beliefs for the people who have strayed from the mainstream, but they're just as much part of the media ecosystem. It's not an awakening. Wayno says, what the F is Juneteenth? Juneteenth is a new holiday. I believe it's not new, but it was more of like certain regions of Texas, and it has to do with the emancipation, but it was like made into a federal holiday, I think in 2020 by Biden. I Am Lost 27 says, why do the elite do these things if not to create a nightmarish reality behind the scenes, just to mess with us? My answer is, the movie The Village explains it. The village is the dream world they want you in. And the elite keep everybody in the dream world through false explanations about what's out there to kill their curiosity. Oh, there's nowhere to go. It's just empty space. Or in this one, it's just demons in the woods and wicked people. And it was the elite who would dress up as demons and prance around in the woods at night. The elders is what they call them in the movie. But elite, elders, it's all connected. The elders represent El, Saturn, the cult that runs this place. And they create this nightmarish fantasy surrounding the dream so you don't stray. Now, if you stray from the dream and you go through the nightmares, you find the real world. That's what happens in the village. And the ones who access the real world are the ones who aren't scared by the stories, or the ones who see through it for various reasons. One is visually impaired, so she's not affected by the visuals of the propaganda. Another is the village. He's kind of a simple-minded, he's sort of a simple intellect. He doesn't think it's scary. He laughs at the stuff. And then the other one is Lucien, played by Joaquin Phoenix, who has this death resurrection thing like he does in all his movies. But the Joaquin Phoenix character is something of a free thinker. But you find out that they do drills, and they call them drills, to scare everyone so that they don't stray. And it's to protect them from the world. They live in a quarantine because the elders all agreed that the world is so bad that they're going to give birth, they're going to raise their children in a quarantine. And again, everything's fine as long as you don't question stuff, but if you stray or if you do, there's a lot of fear, and that fear is meant to be a boundary. And most people don't see through it, or they get obsessed with it, and then they have to spread it. And they have to say, hey, look, I'm awake, I woke to this fear, the world's scary, it's vampires, it's chemicals, and you're all dreaming, wake up. Meanwhile, on the other side of the spectrum, because you got the red pill conspiracy theorists, but the woke pill side, they have their own awakening from the dream, where they find out, oh, everything's racist and sexist and bigoted. Where the more aware you are by trying to see through the dream world, the more your worldview becomes a nightmare version of it, and it pits you against the other groups. So now you're all fighting to wake up the dreamers. It's a perfect closed system. So that's what they do it for. Now, why do they want us in this fantasy? It's control. The best explanation that I have found for this is this Latin phrase, instrumentum regni, the instrument of monarchy. And it was a phrase inspired by Tacitus. And it talked about the use of religion by the state to keep the masses superstitious so they can be controlled. That was actually the point. Instrumentum regni. Again, I believe, and this is from Polybius, I believe it is the very thing which among other people is an object of reproach. I mean, superstition that maintains the cohesion of the Roman state. And this is what he's saying, that, quote, the multitude is fickle, full of lawless desires, unreasoned passion, and violent anger, and the multitude must be held in by invisible terrors and pageantry. For this reason, I think not the ancients acted rashly and haphazard in introducing among people notions concerning the gods and beliefs in the terrors of hell, and that moderns are rash in banishing such beliefs. Well, they haven't banished it, because they replaced the terrors of hell with the terrors of Gaia flooding the world, the terrors of the pandemic, the terrors of terrorists. They've just replaced all the old religion, the superstitions of old religions that were used for the purposes of crowd control. You know, like I've been saying that COVID is a devil the atheists will believe in. Turned the atheistic, godless transhumanists into a bunch of church ladies. They became Puritans overnight. And it's because of this. So that's it's crowd control. Junder says, got to charge my phone, get to bed. Hopefully I'll catch a replay. Yes, you will definitely be hearing more from Infinite Plane Radio at the same time. So if this is a good time for everyone, it is for me, that's for sure. And I'm going to have more time as I get situated in the new place. Now, these last 4 months, it's been a major disruption, of how things normally operate. But we've really solidified a lot of things about where we're going in the future with this. And I've put a lot of work into the IPR, or Infinite Plane Radio, press pass carrying reporters. And we have a new initiative here. It's the deep dive. So if you didn't know, emperor penguins are the deepest diving birds in existence. No one dives deeper. No birds can compete with how deep they dive. And I thought, well, that's perfect, because we're going to be taking auto-hoaxing over the edge. Yeah, if you didn't know, most of the emperors, they dive down like 200 meters or deeper. But we're going to be creating a lot of stories, deep gonzo-style reporting, and we're not trying to appeal to the mainstream audiences. We don't need MSM air. We don't need to breathe what they're breathing. We're writing this, or we're putting this together for those of you in the know with the off-world stage perspective. Fringe connoisseurs, the cutting fringe. A reportage that reflects our level of understanding and our level of sci-war awareness. And if you want to get involved, it's very easy. I'm using Substack and Twitter for most of it, but for the most part, I need fact finders. And we are excellent when it comes to just that. We're always deconstructing fake news events and digging up the minutia. We've doxed a number of high-profile targets who thought they were undoxable. And so I'm saying we're going to turn our fact-finding abilities to these various areas of concern. So, for example, space fakers. Not just space fakery, but the fakers themselves. And I have a lot of ideas on how to approach this. Fake truthers. I think it's always a good idea to kind of find out the motivations behind some of these anonymous Twitter accounts who seem to be endlessly spouting identical memes as many identical accounts. Like there's some kind of troll farms that are at work here we need to expose. We also want to expose the cult leader behind Q, or one of the cult facets of the Q cult being in the White House, George News. We want to dig deeper into George News, how deep they are in the White House, who knows of them. These are all things that we're focusing our reporters on. Fake deaths reported in the media. I think there needs to be a lot of follow-up. People calling the morgues, people checking funeral homes, checking the Social Security death index. Fake activists, feds, and truthers clothing. These are all important things, but we're going to be going deep. Again, IPR deep dives, taking auto-hoaxing over the edge. Some of the approaches we have are, depending on really the press pass carrier, whether it's by phone, in person, we can support any kind of reporting, but I'm looking forward to having a lot of our self-generated in-house content. Not to mention conversations on the phone calls with our reporters who are on site at these various locations, which is really what we focused on in 2020. Sun Rabbit says Branch Covidians are the strictest fundamentalists. Well, the Branch Covidians, we're talking about the new religion. Yeah, they are strict fundamentalists. They have religious garb. They have their hand sanitizer, holy water. They have their priesthood. And it's all about a holy war. It really is. It's a holy war. They're not just purging the world of sin, which is the virus, but of the doctrines of the non-believers, the conspiracy theorists. Let's Go says, deep dive, brilliant. Yeah, when I read this thing about emperor penguins, I thought, this is so perfect because we chose the penguin because we're at the fringe. You know, flat or not, if you keep going, eventually they're the last line before you find out what's at the edge. And if anybody knows, it would be them. They would be therefore the insiders and the outsiders. They can see both sides, so they know more than anyone. And that's perfectly describing the off-world stage perspective. We know what's on the world stage, what they serve, what they say, but we're also aware of what's outside of it. But then we have this other element of the deep dive, the deep diving penguin. Another thing about the penguins that I think ties into what we do here is the way they huddle together and they breathe together to create hot pockets of air, like a campfire. And if you look at the ice as a symbol of ignorance or darkness as ignorance, a bunch of penguins conspiring, breathing together, they're conspiring against the darkness, against the ice. And that to me is pretty much another good metaphor for how the think tank works. In a world of darkness, ignorance, a world going into a dark age created by technocrats to look high tech, what we're doing, I think, is very much like keeping a light in the darkness outside of the area where we're designated to, be able to exist. Like we're beyond their edge, and their world is flat. The world may be a ball, it doesn't matter to me, but the concept of the world conveyed through the world stage media is actually flat and limited in the way they think of it. The way they think of flat Earth. It's truncated, it's limited, it's narrow, and it's not open to new information. Okay, let me see. We have 67 people here in the video chat. Is everyone here signed up for the newsletter? If you're not, I'm going to put a link below. And also, I recommend the Patreon channel for a few reasons. I put the audio feed on Patreon as well, so you never miss anything. And I put all the links on the newsletters. And you're going to want to stay in touch because we're going to be opening phones very soon. And I'm getting a new system, so it's going to have a caller queue, so we can have a number of people in line, back-to-back calls. Okay, so today we have covered Fetterman being JFK Jr., Hotez a little bit, talked about does Elon Musk have plausible deniability? I think everyone here says no. Not until he explains Mousegate, and the Titanic 2 situation, which is happening right now, and that may have some connection to the hunt for Red October, which, again, we've been hearing so much about nukes and Oppenheimer's movie. So at some point, they're going to deploy it. So it makes perfect sense that we're looking right now at a missing submarine. As far as we're talking about the story as it's being conveyed from all these various platforms in a non-linear way, but as you experience it, the story unfolds. It's a fascinating thing to observe here, the predictive programming leading to the real things. And a number of people thought that 6/11 might be a date where we might expect, Seattle to get it. And I kind of thought it was plausible, although Oppenheimer still hasn't come out yet. And predictive programming has to precede the event. But it's on the menu, that's for sure. They're certainly getting it into our heads. Do you think says the latest shooting was in DuPage County? Now, I know nothing about it, but I'm going to have to assume it's fake until proven real. People make a mistake. They're in error when they assume that the news they don't watch is real, that you can just say, I didn't have a chance to watch it, but I'm assuming the millions of people vetted it, therefore it's true. There's this argument from consensus that's kind of built into it. Oh yeah, if it was fake, somebody would have said something. There's no way you fooled millions of people. Oh, really? And nothing makes the case better than the situation with Jussie Smollett. Or with Elliot Page. Elliot Page pulled a Jussie Smollett. And Elliot Page even cried for Jussie Smollett before he learned that Jussie Smollett's thing was fake. Elliot Page releases a book about how oppressed he is, and then gets oppressed by somebody who called him names on the street, but there's no video of it. There's no evidence of it. I don't find it believable. Any more than I find those abs believable, which I think are implants, just saying. But this idea that you can trust the news implicitly because it's being vetted. No, you can go ahead and just disabuse yourself of that notion. They are lying on default. They are liars. That's what they do. It really is. It's like, in a way, it's almost, I don't know. I mean, I don't like to totally frame things good versus evil and God versus Satan. But if you look at the storyline of creation being the result of, chaos, the void, and then the word, God speaks it into existence. You have this idea of words conveying reality, becoming creation. Then you have the antagonist, the father of lies, where his words actually don't reflect the reality. And you have a bifurcation of reality, like the devil's forked tongue. It goes in two different ways. And man has been led into a world of lies by the lying media. And so it makes all the more sense to me when I look at the devil tarot card, where it looks like the devil's on a TV set. He's sitting on a black cube, and man and woman are chained to the black cube. But they're not tugging at their chains. They're eating popcorn and staring at it and laughing, because that's where we are. We are in the devil's world. Everything is truly filtered. It's beyond dispute. And the thing is, though, that the truthers who are accurate in recognizing that the media is a bunch of liars, they take a position that is antagonistic to the liars, and then they call themselves truthers. But both the truthers and liars exist in the dream world, which is in itself a world of lies. That's why the only people who can really claim objectivity and truth are the perpetrators of the Psy War, who know what's real and they don't talk, and those of us who have seen through the dreams, the fakery, the augmentations to this reality, and have bypassed all of their nightmare conspiracy theories designed to keep us engaged. Okay. Sign up for the newsletter if you want to be involved in any of the reporting. That's going to be a bigger thing as time moves forward, especially through this election cycle. I have plans for IPR reporters to be very engaged in the coming election cycle and all of the psyops that are attending it. And I don't want to give away any of our plans. We're going to have to just really surprise the world stagers when they see what we bring. Got Your Back Bear says, Tim, did you hear about the UFO landing in Vegas and the news claimed the family was missing? Now, I haven't heard about that, but I did watch the video. Turns out it was on May Day. So on May Day, you had the 8-foot-tall aliens with glossy eyes landing in the backyard of that Vegas family. Now, I don't know why they called the police instead of recording it for TikTok. That's what I would have done. Get millions of hits, monetize it. But no, they call the police. It's like, what are the police going to do? You tell them there's an alien in the yard. They'll either ignore it, show up too late, or but whatever it is, like the idea here is like you're talking to them on the phone. So we get a second-hand account. And this is how I see them doing the fake space all the time. They're like, well, the Earth is so beautiful. It's so beautiful, I can't even describe it. Well, instead of like reaching for your thesaurus, why don't you reach for your iPhone and then take a picture of it? Why do we always get second-hand? And what they do show us is obvious CGI crap that isn't from a camera. Sun Rabbit says, I think Bill Gates meets the definition of Satan, especially with his non-operating system. Now, Bill Gates is interesting in that sense because if you look at what they're selling, he's selling salvation. And I look at Bill Gates and it makes me think of Marshall Applewhite and Heaven's Gates, the cult, where you can transcend and go to Hale-Bopp, and of course the cult leader kills everybody. And Heaven's Gates is associated with, of course, St. Peter. And you have the Book of the Saved and the Book of the Damned. And so Bill Gates is kind of in that position of St. Peter with the keys to heaven. Like, oh, you go through this to be saved, or you're, one of the unsaved. And of course, it has that culty nature to it, just like the Heaven's Gate cult, the Heaven's Bill Gates cult. And it is similarly nihilistic. And even if it didn't literally kill everybody, it did involve a great deal of self-effacing, self-abnegation, sacrifice of the self for the good of the collective. I think the whole thing was really a red herring. It's not about physically doing anything. It's about the psychological change. We've been inducted into a cult worldwide. A new religion was imposed. That was the objective, and it succeeded. They injected a new religion into the world. Joined by Emote72 7281 from Kick. Yeah, if you didn't know, Infinite Plane Radio is now on Kick. Thanks to HLG for recommending it. Again, as I said before, we're going to be expanding onto all these various platforms because so many of them have just gone hostile. And if there's any new platform you want me to get on, we will. All right, thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully when we get back, we'll have a lot more information about the missing submersible, the submarine. And again, the guy that was on the submarine, the billionaire with the initials HH, also went to space. So if you feel bad about these missing tourists checking out the Titanic, in all likelihood, it's another one of these staged events. Thanks for joining. Get on the newsletter, and I will see you all in Discord.